This story kicks off with a desperate escape from the kind of messed up fate that ruins lives. Bawling her eyes out, the girl can't accept what's happening. She's just a kid born on the wrong side of the blanket. The rightful heir to the sacred Crimson Cross, master of the Light Dragon, and protector of the Assyrian Empire, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Caesar. It's him. Just looking at this gorgeous dude is mind-blowing, and to think someone like him is cursed. Heads bowed in the castle at his sight. Her Royal Highness, the Crown Princess, will be arriving soon. The moment the consort walked into the hall, the rightful heir of the 7 sacred crosses felt his breath catch in his throat. For 2 years, a whole 2 years, this was what kept Caesar going through this long and brutal war. It's Irenea, Ren. It was all for her. She's his guiding light, the one he always reaches for. Burning with anticipation for this reunion all these years, the Crown Prince can finally see her again. But the second he saw the girl entering the Imperial Palace, something inside him just shifted. A young girl with curly, straw-colored hair and sky-blue eyes congratulated His Highness on his victory. Seeing her, Caesar's mood soured instantly. He had one question for her. He wanted to know where his wife was, not understanding what he was talking about, as in, his wife. Milady stated that she was right here, introducing herself as Giovanetta. Confusion washed over her face that His Majesty would dare draw his sword in the palace. Caesar's fury crashed down on the poor girl. He asked one last time, demanding to know where his wife was. All he wants to know is where Irenea is. Shame of the Floor's house. A bastard child forced to do housework like a servant, limping because of her leg. And the cursed first prince of Assetria, the noblest and most pathetic being in the Imperial Palace. The Light Dragon's curse, awakened through royal blood, transformed the once shining prince into a monster. A crippled bastard from a duke's house and a cursed prince. A pair so perfectly pathetic, it's like their union was made in heaven. But even so, Irenea was happy, so happy she had nothing left to regret. As a commander, First Prince Caesar Constantini Fiore was expected to fulfill his military duty in place of the emperor. Taking command of the army in the war against the United Empire and the Beastmen, the Crown Prince decided to leave. Knowing that Caesar would die if he left, more than anything, Irenea didn't want him to go. Ultimately, the first prince of Assetria promised to return, powerless to interfere with the war. Irenea was left alone with her fears and convictions about the death of her beloved. She clung to Caesar as if he was her only home in this world. But as soon as the curse was lifted and he was healed, he left her. The girl sent him letters every day for 2 years, but none were ever answered. Rumors spread through the palace where she was trapped, about an affair between Caesar and Irenea's stepsister. And then her stepsister revealed that the Crown Prince had confessed his love to her, believing everything had just gone back to normal. Maybe after the curse was lifted, he couldn't handle the shame of marrying someone as low as Irenea. Now there's no going back for her, to a place where she has no reason to exist. If she'd known this was coming, she'd have been better off living as a broken fool. Suddenly, the carriage wheel hit a thick branch in the road, and the carriage lurched violently. Confused, the girl got a huge fright, and then the coachman yelled out that they were under attack. Who would have thought they'd be ambushed like this? Still, the coachman jumped out to check what was going on outside. And in that instant, he paid for it with his life, blood splattering everywhere. Horrible thoughts raced through Irenea's mind. Her guess was that the bandits were after the Crown Prince, or maybe they wanted her. Either way, Irenea can't die this ridiculous death, not like this. She has to survive because only the strong survive. Making a crazy decision, risking her life, the girl ran. At that moment, she was driven by the desire to survive at any cost. The strongest survive. But the real question is, what can she even do in a situation this screwed up? Hearing the sounds of brutal violence behind her, Irenea squeezed her eyes shut, praying for a way out. Turning around, she saw a person in armor behind her, definitely not one of the thugs who attacked her carriage. Completely desperate and shaking with fear, the girl pulled a small dagger from under her skirt and told the stranger not to come any closer. Through the heavy raindrops, she tried to make out who it was. Who the heck would dare do this? But the valiant knight was too silent, hidden in the shadows, only his hair swaying in the wind. As soon as Irenea noticed the painfully familiar black hair, she stopped breathing for a moment. Face to face, she came across the man she'd been waiting for these long 2 years. It's Caesar. Taking a heavy breath, the girl felt his icy breath on her lips. She needed to know why he came. Now she understands. The crown prince has come to witness her end. Now that he's perfect, she's the only stain left on him. 3 years back, the rumor was a bride who marries on a rainy day is destined to shed a ton of tears. They said she'd be lucky if nothing went wrong today. Seeing as he's a total monster of a prince, Ren always wondered what the point was in bringing her here. She was the illegitimate kid of Duke Flores, wandering the streets with her mom until she turned 7. Her mother, Annalisa, died in the street from some sickness. In the Flores family, Irene was rock bottom, lower than the servants, maybe even lower than the horses or dogs, the absolute dregs. Then, one day, the first prince picked her out for marriage. The Flores family had been churning out empresses for generations, and now it was Irene's turn. That's when the girl realized they brought her into their home just for this marriage. The eldest daughter, Giovanetta, who isn't even engaged yet, Irenaya was the one who was supposed to take her place because of that cursed prince. The first prince, Caesar. First Prince Caesar rarely showed his face in public because he was sick, and his mother, the empress, offed herself after he was born. Monster Prince, that's what they started calling him ever since. It was a real struggle to find a partner for their cursed prince. Lots of noble families were adopting orphans or marrying off their daughters super young to dodge getting hitched to the cursed prince. The imperial family had 4 marriage proposals from other families, but none of them went through, because all the candidates ended up kicking the bucket. Now Irenaya gets why they brought her here. She's gonna be the princess. Like her dear old mom says, she should be grateful, considering where she came from. The reason those ladies died never came out. Everyone just figured it was because of the crown prince's curse. Marrying the cursed prince? They're basically sending Irene to her death. She'll be the most prominent lady in the empire. What an honor! Mom's words are like a viper's hiss. They're handing a girl a cup full of poison, and she has no choice but to drink it down. If that's her fate, Irene will do it. She'll marry the first prince, a brief moment to enjoy a change in social standing. She can't pass that up. It's her decision. Miss Flores will become a princess by her own choice, even if it leads her to the brink. She knew the first prince rarely appeared in public, but she never expected him to send a substitute to the wedding. What's worse, they didn't even check the bride's body. But Irene herself doesn't know who she plans to stab with this. The moment she heard the clanging of armor and the scrape of metal on the concrete floor, it became clear he was here. Irene stood before the knights, who brought a locked cage containing the most dangerous creature. That's Prince Caesar. He's drugged up, so he's going to be out cold. Seeing how carefully they're shielding him from the outside world, it's hard to believe he's the first prince. The knights are about to ditch them here, and when Irenea heard that, she got even more freaked out. The scariest part is the drug's gonna wear off soon, and the first prince will wake up. At that moment, the girl didn't know what to do. No one ever taught her about this in school. She knows Caesar is cursed, but they're treating the heir to the throne like some kind of animal. Getting closer to him, Irenea thought he looked like a normal guy. But as soon as she got a good look, horror froze in her eyes at what she saw. Hidden beneath the honorable title of Crown Prince is a real beast, his hands covered in scales and long claws. As soon as the drugs wore off, Caesar Fiore opened his eyes, and they looked straight up demonic. He ground his teeth, grunting like some fanged beast waking up from hibernation. Then he grabbed the first thing he could find and smashed it on the ground before leaping up himself. Irene realized she'd stumbled into a monster's lair. She clapped her hands over her mouth in fear and hid behind the corner. She'd never seen such raw, destructive power before. She was in real danger now. Suddenly, Caesar's growling stopped. Maybe the drugs are still working. It's simpler than that. The first prince just found a little gray mouse hiding in his chambers. His devilish eyes, like they were burning right through her, filled the girl with sheer terror and dread. Nobody else sees the point of this wedding. He's just a bastard, abandoned by the Flores family. Doesn't matter. Death is inevitable anyway. This will be the 5th time. Consider it a wedding gift. Someone like Irene is hardly worth a bite, so Giovanetta asked her to at least try a little. If she had to marry a monster and get torn to shreds, she'd rather just end it all with this blade. Irenaya knows it, she gets it, she's been thrown away a long time ago. The only question is whether she'll take her own life, or die at the hands of the creature in front of her. Giovanetta advised her to end it all with this. But there's one thing she doesn't know. Irenaya has never given up on life, always clawing and scratching just to survive. That's why this blade won't be pointed at her. In the end, only the strongest survive. Armed, the desperate girl ordered that monster to stay right where he was. Caesar looked confused. He even double-checked if she told him to stay put. Even though Irenaya told him not to come any closer, the first prince moved right up to her face. But the girl's hands, though shaky, are gripping the blade tightly, and it's almost touching his face. Suddenly, Caesar roared like a wild animal, clutching his head and scrambling away. He collapsed on the floor, making these awful sounds, like growls and snarls. Something weird is going down. Watching him, it hit her. He's scared, but she has no idea what's got him so freaked out. Just then, thunder boomed outside, lightning lit up the room, and Caesar flinched like a kitten. Okay, so this wild beast is afraid of thunder. But that doesn't make any sense right now. This guy, who everyone whispers is a monster, is just shaking because of some thunder. But if Irenea is reading him right, he's not a monster. He's just a scared animal. It's okay. That loud noise isn't going to hurt him. Nothing bad's gonna happen. Seeing the crown prince react like that, Irenea decided to keep trying to calm him down. The thunder outside is way too loud, and Caesar's just losing it right in front of her. He was so scared, he collapsed again, snarling like a terrified animal. Trying to calm him down, Irene noticed her sword nearby and carefully reached for it. She was almost there when the enraged crown prince grabbed her and threw her to the ground. Like a monster gone wild, Caesar Constantine snarled, baring his teeth, reptilian patches appearing on his skin, screaming for him to let go. The girl was terrified, but the first prince dug his claws into her dagger wound. Irene recoiled in pain as the bleeding wound soaked in. Her heart pounded as Caesar suddenly stuck out his long tongue and began licking the bloody wound. The taste of blood seemed to give him some kind of dark satisfaction. He got so carried away that he lightly bit the wound on her arm. It got incredibly hot, and with each touch, Irene flinched and squeezed her eyes shut. Suddenly, she asked him to stop for a second. And at that moment, Caesar snapped back to normal. He's all gentle again, hard to believe after chugging down that blood. Okay, makes total sense now. He's not a monster, more like a big wild animal. It's so weird doing something like that, then just crashing out immediately. Caesar's acting strange, but doesn't seem like he's trying to hurt the girl. In that case, Irenea figured he might be dealing with something similar to what she's going through. But right now, the important thing is she survived, even next to a beast like him. In the morning, one of the knights got stuck cleaning up another body here, thinking he'd better be more prepared this time. As soon as the knights opened the room, they couldn't believe their eyes, seeing the bride alive with the prince asleep in her arms. Hearing the clanging armor, Caesar woke up fast and lunged at the guys like an animal. Irenea wasn't scared at all. She jumped on his back and begged him to stop. This is nothing like the crown prince's old life. His fire's gone, but he doesn't get why. As his fiancé, Irene believes he shouldn't do this. She'll make sure he never gets hurt, and she really hopes he'll be on his best behavior. This monster-taming thing is unbelievable. The knights are frozen in the doorway, stunned. Right now, they've decided to report this immediately to His Majesty the Emperor. Soon, rumors spread that the first prince and his bride spent their first night together. The bride has a few scratches, but she's alive. It's hard to believe she's alive and not seriously injured, looking at the prince's other servants. When the news reached the palace, Empress Cornelia became very interested. Cornelia had been Emperor Guido's mistress since he was crown prince, but became empress after his wife passed. Her son, Matthias, the second prince, was also born when she was still a mistress. 20 years later, he was recognized as heir. The empress is touchy about the whole love child thing, so the maid figured she wouldn't mention Floris's bride was one. Now that they're officially hitched, Cornelia figures they need a place to live. So, she ordered them to have the Malachite Palace. The crown prince's new wife is named Irenea. People are dropping like flies. It's hard to keep track. Who knows how long this one will last? Maybe she'll even end up taking the empress's spot. If that happens, Cornelia asked the maid to pass along a message. Tell her they should get together for tea sometime. Hearing the details of the first prince's wedding night, the emperor decided it was a miracle. The girl's actually alive, just like you'd expect from a Floris descendant. Looks like everyone thought Irenea was a goner. Even she thought so herself. And the blood on the clothes proves yesterday's marriage is still legit. So now nobody can deny their union is legit, at least while Irenaeus still kicking. The place Her Majesty the Empress set up looks pretty ominous and deserted. The imperial maid is sure the girl knows Her Highness. It all happened so fast. And now, apparently, Miss Flores isn't thrilled with the accommodations. After saying she liked it just fine, Irenaea asked her to let Her Majesty the Empress know she appreciates the thought. Then the maid told her to get some rest, and that she'd be leaving her to it. Even though this is the imperial palace, there's not a whole lot going on. But honestly, compared to how Miss Flores was treated back at the Flores place, this is a cakewalk. Suddenly, a servant came into the room to help the young princess with her bath. However, Irenaea said she could handle it herself, and that she shouldn't need help bathing from now on. Soon, a lavish spread was laid out in the palace, but His Majesty was running a little late. According to the imperial servants, from now on, His Highness Prince Caesar and the princess will be living together in the Green Malachite Palace. They might call him a cursed prince, but he's still a member of this country's imperial family. As long as Caesar's around, he'll be a shield. Hearing that His Highness the Prince was arriving, Irenaea was overjoyed and prepared to greet him. But the smile vanished from her face when Caesar was brought in on a chain and muzzled, like some dangerous rabid animal. Horrified, the girl cried out that you can't treat a person like that. She was immediately warned not to approach, or she risked getting bitten. At that moment, a beastly roar echoed. The crown prince went wild before their very eyes and started tearing at his chains. Instantly, the knights surrounded him, ready to fight off the crazed crown prince. Watching how brutally and disrespectfully they restrained him, Irenaea began to beg them to stop. But it was all pointless. The knights used force and weapons to stop the prince's revolt, pinning him to the ground. They made a snap decision to bind him and move him. This ain't for the faint of heart. Irene can't believe anyone could think this is okay. But the knight advised her to keep her hands off the muzzle and chains, if she wanted to keep her fingers. He also gave the girl something she needed, then bowed and left. Now, alone with the crown prince, the girl can't wrap her head around any of this. These wounds weren't here this morning, which means they're fresh. And this muzzle, Caesar can't even eat properly like this. Special food has been prepared for His Majesty. They brought in sliced meat and tongs. As Irene started feeding him through the muzzle, like a tiger through a cage, she realized that, to them, Caesar was less than an animal. Seeing Caesar suffer like that, the girl had no choice but to set him free. She remembered the knight's warning and started to doubt herself. But they still couldn't treat a guy like that. Whatever the risk to herself, Miss Flores decided to take that thing off him, pronto. The crown prince, scared and pissed at the whole world, was thrashing and growling the whole time she was taking off the muzzle. After freeing him, Irenaea looked into his eyes, and there was something mysterious about them. Everything seemed okay, but then Caesar looked down again and started writhing like a snake, muttering to himself. Then something snapped, and the crazed crown prince broke free from his chains and unleashed himself. Lady Flores immediately remembered the knight's words, how he warned her not to touch the muzzle or chains for her own safety. He told her that if anything went wrong, she should throw this bottle right in His Highness's face. Remembering that, the girl steeled herself for a desperate move, scared out of her mind. She still freaked out by His Highness's terrifying look. Caesar saw the bottle in her hands and totally lost it, like he was about to pounce. Irene tried to calm him down with words, but got a nasty swipe in return. The crown prince's rage is destructive. Whether it's hiding fear or just a tool he uses, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate guarantees suffering. Caesar's powerless in this story. Irene realizes now that if she goes through with this, she'll be no better than those other people. Looking at her hand in pain, she noticed she was scratched again. Come to think of it, something similar happened last night, but Caesar pulled himself together pretty quick. The girl can't be totally sure, but it's a risk she's got to take. If the crown prince wants it, Miss Flores offered it to him without a second thought. The second a drop of blood hit the floor, the master caught a whiff and lunged closer. He started licking and nipping at the wounded hand with a desperate hunger, lapping up the bright red blood. So, he finds stability through blood. Thank goodness nobody's around. The prince is known to be cursed, with a lifelong craving for blood. If anyone ever found out about this, I can't imagine what people would say. That's enough. The girl quickly pulled her hand away. At that moment, Caesar calmed down and nuzzled her face. Inhaling the delicate scent of her youthful vitality, the prince can't stop himself. He wants more. Thinking about how he wants more blood, Irenea started telling him to stop, assuring him that it was enough. But overcoming his deadly thirst isn't easy. This animalistic urge made Caesar knock the girl to the floor. As soon as his warm tongue touched her neck, Irenea tensed up, and her heart started pounding. Her whole body went all limp and heavy. She couldn't make him stop what he was doing. Looks like there's no stopping him now. He's burning up inside, needing to feel every inch of her. This is all so intense, Miss Flores felt really strange. When she couldn't take it anymore, she screamed and told the prince to stop right now. Hearing he had to stop, Caesar seemed a little thrown. A flicker of confusion crossed his eyes. If he keeps going at it like this, she might not make it. Caesar doesn't want that, and Irenea doesn't want to die either. It seems he actually understands death, or at least he doesn't want his wife to die. Looking Caesar in the eyes, the girl introduced herself as Irenea. Annalisa called her Ren. After a little effort, the crown prince managed to say a shortened version of her name. So they're husband and wife now, even though nobody thought Irene would survive this marriage. The maids who were cursing her, thinking she'd kick the bucket, this crummy malachite palace, and the empress, who rejects both Irene and Caesar. Caesar's current situation doesn't matter. What's important is that he's the only person she can rely on. Miss Flores is on his side. They're in this together. In that case, she asked him to tell her if anyone ever messes with him again, like they used to. Like those nights before, or those guys who treated him like dirt. The awful memories of that turned the crown prince back into a raging beast. He just kept repeating the word no. He says negative words clearer than others. He must have gone through that stuff countless times. Irene asked him to promise and showed him the gesture that means he's making a vow. Surprisingly, Caesar got it right away. He doesn't seem so scary and ruthless anymore. During dinner, the girl told her husband to hold the fork and eat like that, but he's not very good at it yet. She showed him how to eat, but he just opened his mouth like a little bird. Under the current circumstances, Caesar is acting less like a husband and more like a 5-year-old. Suddenly, the dining room door swung open and a third person entered. Seeing Prince Caesar, the lady started shouting anxiously. The master immediately recognized the woman and even called her by name. He didn't expect to see Mercy. Apologizing for the sudden intrusion, the sweet old woman introduced herself as Mercedes Alonso, a servant of Prince Caesar. She was by His Highness's side as a wet nurse and always looked after him. If she was Caesar's wet nurse, then she must have been a maid to the late Empress Adelheid. She noticed Caesar was getting more sensitive, and the nights were turning to stuff and getting violent more often. Hearing that, Irenea couldn't wrap her head around how things got so bad if Merced knew everything. As soon as the servants found out those two moved into the palace, they rushed over, pronto. Truth is, she feels terrible, but she just didn't have the juice to stop Her Majesty Cornelia. Then Irenea realized if she was a close servant of the late Empress, she must come from a noble family. Still, those hands, rough from work, it must all be to protect Caesar, a prince in name only. More importantly, Mercedes wants to know how the girl pulled it off. There's never been anyone His Highness Caesar would follow like that. He even started rejecting the servant's touch. Thank goodness, Miss Flores managed to calm His Highness Caesar down. She can't say she calmed him down by feeding him blood, because no one would buy that. They'd definitely say Irene was using dark magic to control him, and accuse her of witchcraft. Back when she was just scraping by on the streets, she once saw how they deal with witches. They tie the witch to a donkey and drag her around all day, pelt her with stones, and then hang her on a cross. And then they burn the bodies until every last bit of life is gone. It's the worst punishment, when they deny even the smallest mercy, like a quick death. That's why Irene needs to keep the truth a secret at all costs. Suddenly, Caesar reached out and touched his wife, like he could feel her anxiety. Watching that, Mercedes thinks His Highness Caesar really does care for the young princess. In the evening, Irene returned to her room to sleep. It's time for Caesar to turn in as well. Before leaving, Mercedes warned her about the upcoming tea party with Her Highness Empress Cornelia. So Irene's got a ton to do to get ready for tomorrow too. Lost in thought, she suddenly felt something weird. Throwing back the covers, she saw the prince. Caesar tickled her foot and grinned. "This is kinda nuts." Trying to figure out what to do with him, she realized she was stuck. The second she invited Caesar under the covers, the guy, happy as a clam, flopped down next to her. They're married after all, so it's not the end of the world if they share a bed. It's been ages since Irene last drifted off to sleep, feeling someone's warmth. So she scooted closer. If they slept hugging like this, it'd be warmer and easier to fall asleep. The girl was so beat, her energy completely drained. She was running on fumes. Just as her heavy eyelids closed, Caesar leaned in and gently kissed her cheek. Meanwhile, rumors that the prince's bride is still alive have spread even further. Matthias was already expecting another cold corpse. Now he's sure those conservative old geezers will be absolutely thrilled. His full name is Matthias de la Rosa, and he's the second prince of the empire. Despite the first Prince Caesar's significant mental health issues, the traditionalists backed his claim to the throne. Truth be told, they probably just want a puppet emperor. 3 major powers have established themselves on the continent: the Assyrian Empire of Humans, the Elven Forest, and the Stoic Dwarven Alliance. The Assyrian emperor needs unanimous approval, and the other 2 monarchs want an emperor to their liking. This lucky girl comes from the Flores ducal family. The second prince always thought they were descendants of the hero who hunted the light dragon. When the question arose of whether Sage's blood truly suppresses dragon blood, it turned out their daughter was born outside of wedlock. Not surprised, considering she's a descendant of Cosimo. Though who knows if Cosimo's bloodline really means anything. Matthias is betting her mom was flipping out. But honestly, what else is there to say? More importantly, he never got off on watching women die. If he knew she'd pull through, he'd have shown up. Still, the second prince is gonna run into her soon enough. In front of everyone, the maid was accused of touching His Highness's. Terrified of being punished, the girl swore through her tears that she didn't do it. But the accusations kept coming. Everyone thought she was guilty, but the real culprit who touched the thing is a totally different girl. Looks like Irene had a rough dream this morning. With his eyes closed, the first prince really does look like one hell of a handsome nobleman. Suddenly, the hallway erupted with shouting and arguing. The girl had no clue what was going on. The imperial maids were all bunched up in the corridor, like they were plotting something. To see what the hell was going on, Irenaya stepped out of her room and saw the whole crowd. There's some seriously shady commotion, and one of the maids is shaking like a leaf, cowering on the floor. Turns out, this kid touched His Highness's jewels. The other servants confirmed Delphina did it, and they think this kid should be tossed out. Irenaya froze in her tracks when she heard that, not understanding where all the hostility was coming from. Turning to one of the servants, she told her to explain everything. That's Elda. She's the head maid here. And she heard the new princess is just some illegitimate street kid. This morning, while cleaning, Sarah saw Delphina messing with His Highness's precious things. So they all came here to report this. Irenea knows that look all too well. The same eyes the servants gave her when she first walked into the Flores mansion. Being an illegitimate kid with no support, hated by the lady of the house, was worse than being a maid. Even a maid could get promoted and gain influence. They could save money and move on to better jobs. But Irenea wasn't allowed any of that. Not in her position in this family. She tied herself to the Flores name forever, taking their surname, and for over a decade, she's been treated worse than the help. That's why she sees their true colors. It's a real eye-opener. Makes you wonder if her valuables really went missing like they're saying. After being reminded that this was Elda's job, the princess said it was totally out of line. She accused the maid of not being able to keep track of her master's valuables and failing to train the servants properly. And to top it off, Elda's causing a ruckus at the mistress's door before she's even awake. Right now, Lady Irenea only talks about her, someone who can fearlessly marry a monster prince without any backing. Turns out, they were all assigned here on Countess Elvira's orders. In that case, their insolence is a stain on Countess Elvira's honor. Since the servants aren't afraid of the new princess, she personally vowed to report their disrespect to the lady. And to do that, she'll have to bring something even more alarming. Pressured by the princess, Elda dropped to her knees and confessed her wrongdoing, admitting she messed up big time. She apologized loudly, but Irenea kept replaying the words in her head. Wrong, guilt, mistake. They say a bride who gets married on a rainy day will shed a lot of tears. Honestly, it all started that very morning, on her wedding day. Call it petty revenge if you want. But in this palace, survival means laying down the law. Figuring the servants were about to kick off an even bigger scene, Irenaya made it clear she wouldn't tolerate any more shameful behavior. She shooed everyone away. But then she spotted that maid, the one who touched His Highness's precious item. And then it hit her. Delphina was behind this whole thing. Come to think of it, Irenea had the same dream last night. Maybe she's wrong, but she's positive that last night's dream played out exactly like this. Thinking she might be losing it, the princess told them to get out and fetch a knight. She ordered them to summon a knight immediately and told everyone else to stay put. As soon as the knight showed up, Miss Flores turned to Sarah and asked what was in her apron pocket. Seeing the maid's terrified reaction, the lady ordered the knight to check it out. Obeying the order, the knight grabbed the servant, but she insisted it wasn't her who stole the jewels. It was Delphine. Even so, the knight pulled His Highness's jewels right out of her pocket. Irenea is sure they were all shouting that Delphine was the one who swiped the bling. But let's call it what it is. Theft. A serious offense that needs some serious consequences. Despite the maid's pathetic pleas, the princess ordered them all taken away for questioning. If she hadn't spotted the setup, that girl would have been banished. Delphine's super grateful for the mercy. Back in her bedroom, our girl still doesn't get what's going on. But she knows what's most important right now. She needs people. People she can actually trust in this palace. By this point, the monster prince finally woke up. He looks way less scary in the morning than usual. Irenea is glad to see him. She touched his cheek, and Caesar actually blushed. He's so sweet and gentle. The crown prince has been through way too much crap. For a guy who's always handled tough, nasty situations by being a jerk, Irenea will help him turn things around. Their fates are tied together now. For Caesar's sake, and her own, she's got to surround them with people they can trust. To make that happen, she needs to have a little chat with the Empress. Mid-conversation, Baroness Aronso's voice echoed in the room. She was looking for His Highness Caesar. Seeing him snuggled up to the princess like a little kitten, the Baroness realized they seemed to be getting along just fine. Actually, she needs to tell them both something. The thing is, they're scheduled for tea with Her Majesty the Empress this afternoon. Perfect timing! Irenea wanted to ask Her Majesty something anyway. Hearing that all she needed to know was whether she had the authority to appoint new staff, Baroness Aronso was stunned. She heard about the ruckus that went down today, and thinks the princess handled it well. Those maids were out of line. Miss Flores was honestly caught off guard. The way those servants treated Caesar was totally unacceptable. Everyone in this palace serves Countess Elvira. They act like they've got the Empress herself backing them, even if it's just indirectly. Still, that doesn't excuse how they treat other people. Her Highness the Princess asked Mercedes for a favor, since she's aware of her current situation. She didn't bring any maids from her family's estate. She doesn't really trust anyone in this palace. As soon as Irenea asked her to help, even just until she gets her own lady-in-waiting, the Baroness happily agreed. Even if Mercedes' skills are limited, she's honored to be of service. Suddenly, a maid walked in, reminding Her Highness that she needs to get dressed and ready for the luncheon before tea. Turns out, Caesar isn't attending. The Empress would rather not face the first prince. Hearing their conversation, the first prince suddenly got seriously pissed and said no way, talking about Cornelia. Judging by that nasty look on his face, he's dead serious and knows exactly what he's saying. Feels like that stuff Irenea gave him last night is already wearing off. In that case, she asked for just a minute alone with the prince, said she needed to talk to him privately. No matter how many times she sees that look, it never gets any easier. Caesar needs this girl more than anyone realized. He's drawn to her like an animal. They can't leave any traces where they can be seen, because Irenea has a meeting with the Empress. Every place the first prince touches with his tongue makes the girl wish he'd touch anywhere but there. To distract him, the girl lightly messed with her wound to let some blood out. Catching the scent of blood, Caesar's expression instantly changed, and he confidently reached for the bleeding wound. The second his hot tongue touched her wound, the girl closed her eyes, overwhelmed by this weird sensation. She wasn't sure if she should even let this keep going. Irenea could only hope she wasn't messing anything up with Caesar in the process. Before meeting the Empress, Miss Flores had asked them to keep things as simple as possible. They probably already didn't like her, so the best thing she could do was not stand out. It was no secret she'd hurt her arm last night and gotten treatment, but if they used the wound as an excuse, that'd be a problem. Now, Lady Irenea was finally ready to meet Her Highness. She'd be back soon. Not wanting to let her go, Caesar was furious, but there was nothing she could do about it. Since His Highness was putting Her Highness in a tough spot, the Baroness decided to stay with him for the time being. All the first prince needed to do was let her go for a bit. But all he could manage was to say no. Soon enough, Her Highness Princess Flores arrived at the imperial palace. Looks like they deliberately kept her in the dark about where to go. Of all the places, the greenhouse is the furthest thing from the Emerald Palace. Obviously, they did it knowing full well she's not exactly mobile. The crown princess will pay her respects to Her Majesty the Empress. Once the two ladies finally met, a heavy silence hung in the air, and you could cut the tension with a knife. Bowing her head to Her Highness, Irenaya praised the Holy Cross Palace and greeted the Empress. But Lady Cornelia didn't exactly roll out the red carpet. She was giving the princess the stink eye, like she didn't trust her. By the time Miss Flores finally made it to the greenhouse, her legs were completely shot. Her legs gave out from exhaustion, and she almost went down if Delphine hadn't caught her just in time. Countess Elvira asked the princess to come to the table and told the others to step aside. The Empress is a powerful woman, holding supreme authority, the very image of beauty and strength. First, she wanted to know how the princess was finding life in the palace and if she was comfortable. The Empress got no answer, but Irene has something to tell her, and it concerns His Highness the Prince. The thing is, imperial guards, or maybe servants. She's not entirely sure. There are people who are hurting the prince. His body was covered in wounds, and they even used chains and a muzzle to restrain him. After hearing this, Empress Cornelia just silently snapped her fingers, and a pipe was immediately brought to her. Taking a puff, the Empress asked what the young princess expected of her. Irene is fed up with the feeling of injustice. She felt like Her Highness just didn't hear her. Cornelia believes that to be treated like a human, you have to be one. When she asked what defines a person, her parrot immediately squawked back, "A person!" That's the truth. You gotta act like a human to be called one. The Empress is convinced, because she's never once seen Irenaeus, that the first prince acts like a human being. A human's gotta walk on two legs, use tools, and speak the language of people. But the second the Emperor's parrot started talking like a person, complimenting her hat and greeting her, Irenaeus was horrified. That's when the Empress asked her to explain the difference between the first prince and that bird. If you think about it, in some ways that bird is better than the first prince. At least Cornelia can control it with one hand. But she's more worried about the first prince, that wild animal, that goes completely off the rails. Of course, you'd need a firm hand to keep him in line. The Empress is sure, without some serious discipline, he's impossible to handle. It's only natural to keep a wild beast in check. She can't go around calling him a beast. He's a freaking prince, all right? The Empress just burst out laughing at that. Guess the princess has got a pretty sharp sense of humor. That's probably the best joke Cornelia's heard all year, seriously. His Highness is definitely different. The way he loses it around blood, like a total maniac. His left arm starts changing, turning into something like a reptile's limb. And those glazed-over eyes, like a wild animal? Anyone would call it a curse without a second thought. But Irenea needs to remember something. That smile, those soft, gentle eyes, they also belong to Caesar, His Highness the man. It's pretty obvious to the Empress now. This little thing actually cares about her husband. For a nobody with no backup, clinging to a dimwit husband is probably her only play. Irenea just about curled up with rage at what the Empress just said. They won't even acknowledge Caesar's title, let alone see him as a person. And Miss Flores is in the same boat, treated exactly the same way. She can't convince someone who doesn't see her as human. So, she decided to ask if the Empress would acknowledge Caesar if he started acting like a man. Irenea will do it. She'll make Caesar walk on two legs, use tools, and talk like a human being. But the thought of taming that beast struck Cornelia as hilarious. Still, if the princess actually pulls it off, she's willing to acknowledge him. The Empress will hand over the Blue Flame Dream to her. The Blue Flame Dream is a necklace passed down to the rulers' wives since the founding of the empire. According to Cornelia, wearing it in public would be the same as declaring her full support for the princess. Not only is the crown prince getting recognition, but he's also becoming a contender for the throne with the backing of the imperial family. She figures that should be more than enough to get the recognition Irenaea's after. The Empress gave the girl until the summer ball, 3 months from now. And another thing, she hates liars. So if the princess tries to pull a fast one with empty promises, she'll have to make her pay. After the meeting, the second prince was waiting for her, and he mentioned he'd heard Miss Flores tamed that psycho. So he was expecting some kind of rough buff lady, but she's just a plain Jane. Irenea from House Flores, and she just came from seeing his mom. That's a terrifying and ruthless face. The face of Empress Cornelia. If he's talking about the Empress as his mom, then the girl just greeted the second prince, Matthias. As soon as he got close and said she didn't need to be so tense, it was clear he even moves like the Empress. Still, Miss Flores never gave him permission to call her by her first name. Matthias knew he screwed up. Back then, he thought he should call her sister-in-law. If the second prince didn't need anything else, Irenea was going to take off. But he quickly stopped her. Just then, her legs gave out and she totally ate it, face planting right into this dude. Matthias pulled her close, real tight, and told her to watch herself. Crossing way over the line, he kissed her bare shoulder. He was just curious if this idiot even knew the first thing about being intimate with a woman. Freaked out by what just happened, Irenea froze solid. Matthias figures his sister-in-law's having trouble with her legs, so he ordered a palanquin brought for her. All the way back to her room, she kept replaying everything. She'd never heard such a low-down insult before. Suddenly, she heard someone call her name, and she figured it was Caesar. Nobody else goes into the bedroom but her, so it's a mystery where Caesar's been hiding. Just then, the crown prince crawled out from under the bed, looking totally disheveled and beat up. Looks like he's been under there the whole time. Caesar's covered in dust, like he used himself as a mop. He looks so ridiculous. Irene couldn't help but burst out laughing. This magnificent palace, and her, who doesn't quite belong. Eyes and cold stares following her everywhere she goes. Then there's the Empress and the second prince, always looking for a chance to, well, make her life difficult. Even though it feels like she could be crushed at any moment, right now, looking at Caesar, she feels free. But still, Miss Flores can't let Caesar stay such a mess. She promised to show him his true self, and it's time for a real transformation. First thing the princess did was call Mercedes. The Baroness has been looking for His Highness for a while now. Thing is, they need to give Caesar a bath. He's gotten way too dusty. Hearing that, Mercedes looked confused, like something was wrong. But she quickly snapped out of it and promised to get everything ready to help with the bath. Her hesitant reaction is a little worrying to Irene. But surely nothing bad can happen just from a simple bath. The girl decided to just wait and see what happens, when suddenly she heard a blood-curdling scream. Caesar stormed out of the bathroom, furious. He was so fixated on something that he came out completely naked, didn't even bother to get dressed. Acting on his baser instincts, he pounced on Ren and pinned her to the bed. He pressed so close to her that his body was way too close for comfort. Just at the right moment, the terrified Baroness burst into the room with a towel. Figures, the first prince is having a total meltdown over bath time. His Highness won't even let them pour water on him, so they're out of options. This is rough on everyone. Irenea had no idea things were this messed up. If he can't even take a bath, the future looks bleak. But the princess decided to give it a shot. Hearing that, Mercedes is having doubts, because Her Highness probably doesn't have any experience helping with baths. For Caesar to survive, things have got to change. Supporting each other is what a married couple does, so she'll give it a try. Irenea definitely has experience with laundry and odd jobs, but she's never helped bathe a person before. Still, she rolled up her sleeves, showing she wasn't about to just throw in the towel. First thing, the servant tried to run a hot bath, and that immediately set off the first prince. In his extreme animalistic rage, he lashed out at the kid, leaving a nasty wound. Things just got real bad. That servant was straight up disrespecting the prince because of what happened. Irenea, knowing how screwed they could be, ordered everyone to stop now and back off. After all that, the girl was still a little stunned at how Caesar managed to pull that off. Mercedes figured the princess finally understood that His Highness just can't do bath time. Since he hates bathing that much, the Baroness decided to get him to his room, or he's gonna catch a cold at this rate. Realizing the problem was Caesar just plain hated it, Irenea asked everyone to hold up a sec. She admitted she'd been way too casual about it, but they couldn't just drop it now. They gotta finish this bath, even if Caesar's totally against it. Worried about what'll happen next, Mercedes tried to stop the princess, asking what she was up to. Seriously, they just gotta get this bath done. Irenea promised the Empress she'd make Caesar more manageable. What we need to figure out right now is what Caesar needs. Mercedes got it, and now she's decided to leave the rest to Her Highness. Seeing how the servants used to treat Caesar, Irenea can understand why Mercedes is so overprotective of him. At least she's the only one who volunteered to get rid of Miss Flores in this palace. Figuring it's a priority, first thing she decided to find out is why Caesar hates taking baths so much. Just mentioning the word makes him angry, and he starts ranting about how much he hates it. Trying to convince him, she said that taking a bath is nice, your body warms up, and you can feel rested. Dipping your hand in warm water, your body relaxes, and it'll feel so good. Judging by Caesar's reaction, it looks like he's not completely uninterested. Then it's entirely possible that he doesn't like being bathed by the servants, considering how badly those people treated him. If he doesn't like being bathed by others, then Irenea will teach him how to wash himself. She'll help him out this time, but she's not gonna rush things. Now that she thinks about it, the crown prince didn't react to the servant's blood earlier. She thought he'd go wild for any blood, but it turns out that's not the case. This time, Floris poured water from above, and it went way better than she expected. But she didn't think about one thing. Teaching him to bathe means she'd have to, show him how it's done. Suddenly, she couldn't take it anymore and said this wasn't going to work, buttoning up Caesar's clothes. She told him to hold onto his shirt tight so it wouldn't come undone. Even if they solved one problem with teaching, she'll have to, demonstrate. Before, Caesar would only start eating after Irenea took a bite first. She's got to teach him. It's all for his education, after all. While Miss Floris was undressing, she asked Caesar to turn away for a sec. And once she was ready, she told him he could look back, standing there without her dress. Right now, all she's thinking is that she doesn't want to keep her legs exposed any longer. Honestly, you could call it an accident. That's when Giovanetta blamed her sister, saying she fell because she wasn't paying attention. The servants looked at her like she was dirt, and her stepmother, Celestina, and stepsister openly mocked her. And her own father, Gasparo, who only cared about parties and having a good time, didn't give a damn about any of it. After that, nobody even bothered to check up on little Irenea. And a few weeks later, when the whole thing came to light, it was too late to do anything about her legs. After that, Irene became a target for humiliation and ridicule. Everyone and their mother insulted her, treating her like she was worthless trash. She was terrified Caesar would think she was disgusting too, but the moron just started sniffing her clothes. He doesn't even get what she's worried about, which is probably a good thing, actually. To teach the prince how to wash up, Miss Floris slowly climbed into the bathwater. As soon as the hot water enveloped her body, it felt so good, so soothing. Suddenly, Irene splashed water on Caesar, and he froze, bewildered, like a kitten caught in the rain. The girl burst out laughing. Seriously, the prince is so cute, she can't take it. Finally, she told him not to be such a grump and dragged him into the water with her. Caesar splashed into the water, and there they were, both in the tub. Turns out, it wasn't so bad after all. Truth is, the girl loves being clean. Back at the Floris mansion, she couldn't just bathe whenever she wanted. That's why Irene wants Caesar to smell nice too. She filled the tub with some sweet-smelling bubble bath, letting the kid get a whiff. Suddenly, Miss Floris felt the soap hit the wound and immediately noticed Caesar's reaction. It flashed through her mind that he was going to try and take what's hers again. But his movements are so gentle, like he's trying to heal the wound. Turns out, it's not that hard. You just gotta find the right way to deal with a scared animal. Once Caesar finally got himself properly cleaned up, all that was left was what's under the robe. Even then, Irene can't wash those personal areas. She figured the young master could handle the rest himself, so she started to leave. But the crown prince grabbed her, not letting her go. There's no way he can do it himself. Back in the water, Miss Floris told him he couldn't do that. She's glad he trusts her, but him running around bare-skinned? Nope, can't have that. Thank goodness the plan worked to offer the prince a gift if he just handled things himself. Irene told him to wash up real good, rinse off, and then dry himself with a towel, and she'd give him a reward. Holding his wife's hand to his face, Caesar asked her to give it to him. He probably means he wants her to pat his face. Irene will do it for him if he washes up well and comes out, and only then. It's like a miracle, Caesar actually washed himself and came out. But instead of being happy, Mercedes reminded them again that they need to take better care of Caesar. Nothing happened this time, but in the future, she asked the princess to make sure it doesn't happen again. Besides, the Baroness hadn't forgotten the girl made a promise to the Empress. To be exact, they agreed that Caesar and she would attend the banquet in 3 months, and Irenea would also teach him etiquette. Not wanting to argue, Mercedes offered to help if anything was needed. Soon after finding out that both their majesties would be attending the banquet, hosted by Her Majesty the Empress, the maid was in disbelief. That's how it all went down. So Irenea turned to Delphine with a request. What's needed for this so-called makeover, to turn Caesar into a proper human being, isn't perfection. Members of the imperial family don't just sit in their seats the whole banquet. All they do at the banquet is greet others in public, sit quietly, eat, and smile. There's no way to completely fix Caesar in 3 months, so we need a little white lie. To fool everyone's eyes during the banquet, we need someone who knows imperial etiquette inside and out. Heard Irene say Delphine used to work on the jewelry in the Malachite Palace. Her Highness saved the girl's life, so she'll do anything if it means helping Her Highness. Normally, there's a specific person for the imperial family's clothes, but His Highness Caesar hasn't been wearing formal attire until recently. The princess consort can pick her clothes from what she already has. Delphine says it's customary to order a new dress before a banquet, and not doing so might send the wrong message. Right in the middle of our chat, Countess Elvira walks in, happy to see Her Highness. With a snap of her fingers, the room's filled with fancy clothes and jewelry. A gift from Her Majesty the Empress. Her Majesty was deeply moved by your dedication to Caesar and told Elvira to spare no expense in supporting you both. So, the Countess is always at your service and will actively help you, following Her Highness's orders. So Irene shouldn't be saying she failed because she didn't have any support. The young princess asked me to tell you that she'll definitely live up to Her Highness the Empress's favor. Truth is, Irene isn't happy with how the current staff is doing their jobs. Some of them are even careless around Caesar, so she wants most of them replaced. Countess Elvira moved fast, like she was proving her point, and happily agreed to her request and replaced the staff. The menu definitely got way better. The changes happened practically overnight. It's pretty extravagant, even though it's Friday and we're observing Lent, a day of abstinence. Luckily, Mercedes is also invested in his success. But while all this was going on, Irene suddenly noticed something unacceptable in her actions and put a stop to it. She told the Baroness not to do everything for him because she shouldn't treat him like a kid. Last time Miss Flores said she'd teach Caesar some manners, Mercedes made it crystal clear she'd help out. But, according to the Baroness, since we can't eat meat today, he might get sick if someone doesn't look after him. Even so, there's no need to go that far. The princess consort's giving us a weird look. Still, Mercedes is positive Her Highness will get used to it. Seeing the lady about to feed Caesar again, Irenea stopped her right there. She gave His Majesty a fork, since he'd used one before, and suggested he feed himself. But the lazy crown prince just chucked the fork aside. Noticing he was struggling, Mercedes rushed to help, but Irenea told her to hold up. First things first, Delphine handed him a clean fork to replace the one he dropped. The princess consort will repeat this as many times as it takes until Caesar can handle it himself. She gave the prince a new fork and this time asked him not to throw the silverware. But that didn't work either. Caesar probably thinks it's some kind of game. All this is getting to Baroness Mercedes. With every attempt the princess makes to feed Caesar, her anger grows. Suddenly, she remembered that Irenea is going to attend the banquet with His Highness the Prince. The Baroness was just wondering, doesn't she think she's being a little too ambitious? Miss Flores got that feeling again, but she really doesn't think that's the case. Then, Mercedes, in a rage, insisted that the princess consort doesn't know how Caesar used to live and isn't considering his past. Irenea understands her concern, because Caesar could actually get hurt in the process. But this is definitely what Caesar needs. No pain, no gain. Those words finally set Mercedes off. Now she's sure the princess wants to make a fool out of Caesar. These people, this whole fancy shindig. She can't stand to see His Highness get humiliated like this. This Baroness ain't gonna let it happen. She'll protect her prince. Now the heroine gets it. This is attachment, twisted motherly love like poison. She always felt uneasy about Mercedes' need for Caesar's approval and how she treated him like a kid. After Caesar's curse was exposed, most people turned their backs on him, even his own mother, the former empress. Already in poor health, she took her own life in a fit of madness. Mercedes was the only one who accepted him. The problem is, she's got a weird personality, way too emotional. If Caesar's grown up only getting this kind of one-sided affection, Irenea can understand why he hasn't matured yet. One thing's for sure, this woman ain't helping Caesar grow up, so she doesn't need the madam's help anymore. That hit the Baroness like a ton of bricks. Real fear flashed in her eyes. Just like Miss Flores said, she's withdrawing her previous request for assistance. From now on, She's asked Madame Mercedes to stay out of Caesar's business. It all worked out in the end, though they had to, lose 17 forks in the process. After that whole mess went down, Mercedes never came back. After pulling a disappearing act like that, she might not ever show her face again. Irenaya still thinks it was the right call for the future, though. But all of a sudden, she's curious what Caesar thinks about it. That's why she dared to suggest that Caesar might be upset that she ran Mercedes off. The prince didn't say anything in response. He's good at showing his displeasure, so Irenaeus taking his silence as a good enough. We gotta do this now. There's no time to waste. This is our only shot to avoid the other servants seeing us. Caesar crashed hard that night, even before his wife did. That's when Irenea looked at her leg again and realized the wound wasn't as bad. For some reason, Caesar gets stabilized when he drinks blood, so Irenea decided to feed him hers. We still don't know how he'd react to other people's blood, so this is the safest way to make sure the secret stays buried. The only problem was, she couldn't hide the wound every time, but there was one place she could. A place where getting hurt now and then wouldn't raise any eyebrows, and a place where she could come up with excuses, even if the wound was killing her. Maybe she should call it luck. Even this useless body had one advantage. Suddenly, hearing Caesar's voice, Irenea realized he was talking in his sleep. Who would have guessed this face belongs to the cursed prince? I can't shake the memory of Mercedes asking her that messed-up question. Miss Flores could answer that question with confidence, because she's seen glimpses of Caesar's life. Caesar deserves to be in a warmer, brighter place, because he's a man who rightfully deserves it by birth. And to achieve that, the whole process is absolutely necessary. Irene will definitely make it happen. Caesar was raised entirely by Baroness Mercedes herself. He's no different than her own child, so it's her duty to protect Caesar. Caesar, that child is her son. No one can break their bond, not even that sassy little brat. Rumors that this lowlife is still alive reached Giovanetta Flores, the eldest daughter of the Flores ducal family. Hearing the shouts, the Duchess, her mother, Celestina Flores, told her not to raise her voice, as it's unseemly. Giovanetta's flipping out that nobody told her about Irene. She already had her dress, hat, and gloves ready for the funeral. Lady Celestila, afraid of the rumors, told her daughter to keep those kinds of thoughts to herself. It's a shock to her, too. That girl was always strangely resilient. Even as a kid, even when they pinched or hit her, she wouldn't make a sound or cry. When her family starved her, she survived by gnawing on roots and dirt mixed with stale bread in the garden. They gave her impossible homework and had the teachers punish her, but she stayed up all night memorizing every book. Giovanetta doesn't need to worry, 'cause her mother isn't gonna just stand by and let Irene get ahead of her. Time to start getting ready to head to the Imperial Palace. Celestina will make sure her daughter's close to the Empress. Meanwhile, the Marquis Peregrino's daughter is fighting tooth and nail against being forced to marry someone like him. This is probably payback for causing a scene at the wedding. Look, she didn't do anything that bad. She was just freaked out. Renee woke up in a cold sweat from the nightmare she had, hearing Caesar calling her name over and over. She was shocked she was even alive after coughing up so much blood. Caesar was right there with her the whole time, gently wiping a tear from her eye and telling her to get up. Seeing him so close and clearly, Irene realized it was all just a dream, but she still feels like she can't breathe. And she can't shake the feeling that something that intense couldn't just be a dream. It's like Caesar suddenly became a different person, touching her head and saying everything was okay, which is kinda hard to believe. Sounds like he's mimicking how his wife calms people down, and it actually works, bringing Irene back to reality. Suddenly, the Crown Prince said something about purity, but he's still having a hard time getting his thoughts out. He grabbed her and hugged her so tight that Irene's face was buried in his chest. No way! Miss Flores is catching a whiff of some amazing lavender, which is totally her thing. So Caesar actually took a bath himself, and now he's hoping he did a good job. Caesar, who used to hate even touching water, bathed himself, and Irenia said he did awesome. Now it's time to give Caesar this. He tried real hard and deserves some sweet affection. Something just came over her in that moment, and she got so close that their lips were almost touching. Not really knowing what just happened, she said that it's a trendy greeting in the capital these days. Caesar was being so cute, and she just reacted without thinking. Following her lead, the Crown Prince then moved in and touched his lips to her hair. He actually likes Irenea, but coming from Caesar, those words probably don't mean anything romantic. This girl's got the Crown Prince hooked, and she's into him too, even though he can be scary sometimes. and even hurts her. The next morning, Her Highness the Princess called her maid in for a chat, wanting to know what kind of people Caesar's ex-fiancés were. She wants Delphine to be straight with her, because she's asking in good faith. Delphine didn't meet all of them personally, but she heard from Lady Alonso about how they acted while they were here. Each of the 4 previous brides stayed in the imperial palace to undergo the necessary training before the wedding. Every time, there were clashes with Lady Alonso, especially the Marquise Peregrino's daughter, who caused a scene at a ceremony. It's a well-known, prestigious family, but Irenea couldn't figure out why the name sounded so familiar. And then it suddenly hit her. Her nightmare. The Marquis' daughter didn't want to get married. That's where she heard the name. The princess is sure it was Peregrino. The situation matches up perfectly with what she saw in her dream. Now it's clear it wasn't just a dream. This has triggered the princess to remember some bad stuff from way back when. To help her feel better, Delphine suggested burning some calming incense. When Delphine was falsely accused, Irene was only able to expose the real culprit thanks to a dream she had the night before. The maid froze when Mrs. Flores suddenly asked if she knew how the young lady from the Peregrino family died. The woman who almost became crown princess fell by the hand of the cursed prince. That's how the rumors spread, and people believed them. It's true that Caesar can be aggressive with others, but it always seemed like a way to protect himself, not to actually hurt anyone. The Caesar that Irene has seen so far, she just doesn't believe he's capable of that. Delphine suddenly apologized and said that someone like her wouldn't know about such things. In that case, the princess told her to forget about the question and started talking about Lady Alonso. The maid heard that the lady hadn't left her room since this morning. She seems calm and gentle on the outside, but there's something really off about her. According to Delphine, this lady cares deeply about Crown Prince Caesar. Sometimes her love just gets way too intense, you know? Irene was supposed to start a new lesson with Caesar today, but he suddenly vanished. She heard a scream coming from up above, but the sun was blinding her, so she couldn't see anything. But as soon as a dark figure blocked the sun, she saw a person on the tower and understood what was going on. Fearless Caesar had climbed all the way to the top and started calling out to his wife, waving happily. Irene barely had time to tell him to be careful when Caesar slipped off the roof and plummeted to the ground. Realizing he actually fell, the girl's mind raced with terrible thoughts about the prince being dead. But his happy voice and cheerful face let Irene breathe a sigh of relief. He was okay. Without a word, Miss Flores collapsed onto the ground, completely drained and barely holding back her fury. She called the prince a bonehead, terrified that he'd do something like that and get hurt. After a jump from that height, anything could have happened. But Caesar insisted he was totally fine. He jumped from that height, and he's still perfectly okay? Something seriously weird is going on here. More importantly, how the heck did the prince even get up there? And what were the guards doing the whole time? Their job is to be right by the prince and protect him, but they're only showing up now. Pointing to the top of the highest tower, Her Highness asked if they knew Caesar had jumped from up there. There was no answer, so she asked again if they were aware of what had just happened. A faint smirk showed from under the knight's mask, but he claimed he didn't know what she was talking about. Since everything's okay, the knight dared to assume nothing happened. Guess nobody got seriously hurt. A guy fell from the top of the spire. Irenea can't believe he's saying nothing happened. Certain this is something the guards should be dealing with. The princess vowed to report this incident. The guards burst out laughing when they heard that, curious about who she thought she was going to tell. I mean, Her Majesty the Empress gave the order to keep things running real smooth around here. The Empress won't hear about it unless the first prince himself tells her. But still, the knight seriously doubts their prince, who can barely even talk, could pull that off. Irenea, furious, told him to watch his mouth, saying she wasn't afraid to give His Highness a piece of her mind. That made the guard realize the princess had no clue how things really worked. Even if Her Highness the Princess disappears, nobody's gonna care. It'll just mean one more dead princess. If the rumors were true, the fact Irenea was still alive was a total fluke. If she did kick the bucket, nobody'd bat an eye. The cursed prince just found another scapegoat this time. They'd say about her, good riddance. At least she died a noble. The knight wondered if the princess really wanted to disappear, or was just doing it for attention. Not letting the knight get a word in, Caesar, totally enraged, grabbed him and hoisted him off the ground. Afraid for their buddy, the other guards rushed to help. At this rate, someone's gonna get seriously hurt. Irene tried her best to stop her husband, but this was a side of Caesar she'd never seen before. This wild side of him, the part she always kept at arm's length. She doesn't know if she can even reach him. She thought she had Caesar figured out, but now she's not even sure if this is the same guy she knows. Maybe Irene was naive to think she ever really knew him at all. Maybe she was wrong. But even so, she's got to at least try to stop him. She doesn't want to see Caesar hurt anyone, and she believes he's better than this. She's convinced that if he does something like this, he'll actually become the monster prince everyone thinks he is. The second Irene begged him to stop, the prince froze instantly, hanging on her every word. Caesar immediately pulled his wife close and let those damn knights go. He handled it well, he kept it together. They're all gone, everything's okay now. First thing, Irene, thank him for listening to you and for stepping in on your behalf. If Caesar hadn't intervened, things could have gotten even worse. But he shouldn't go after people like that, because Miss Flores doesn't want to see him hurting others. But it became clear to Caesar that Ren was hurting. Things weren't okay, Ren was hurting. So, the crown prince got angry because of her. Not even because she was directly injured, but because her feelings were hurt. Actually, Irene doesn't remember anyone in her life ever getting angry for her. Even so, Caesar can't do that, or he'll get into serious trouble. Miss Flores really can't scold such a sweet little puppy. Seriously, she's convinced there's no prince more handsome than the one standing right in front of her. After that whole mess, the head of security just vanished from our escort. No warning, no punishment. Which probably means the Empress, took care of it quietly. But thanks to that day, Irenaya knows what she needs to do now, even though we were going to get to it anyway. Now it's time to teach His Highness Caesar everything this young princess knows. If he's got to attend a banquet, he needs to learn to speak way more naturally. The first prince is going to run into a lot of people, and he's got to be able to hold a conversation with them, one way or another. Right now, his language skills are like barely stringing two words together. More like a toddler. If he can't speak fluently, at least he should learn to clearly express his feelings. Literacy will be a big help. Thing is, he's not interested in kittens or puppies at all. He probably doesn't even like them. First, Irenaya tried teaching Caesar to put letters together to spell his name. But Caesar wasn't feeling it, so she showed him her name, Irenaya. And wouldn't you know it, a spark of interest lit up in him. Suddenly, the first prince jumps in and easily spells out a nickname for Irenaya, Rin. Seriously unbelievable. Caesar's acting like he knows everything now. He's breezing through words like cute, girl, wedding, cake. Irenaya totally underestimated Caesar. It's clear now, he was just bored because it was too easy. Even when the princess decided to take his lessons to the next level, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Caesar's actually killing it. He messed up a couple times at first, but now he's writing letters like a pro. Since he's blown Miss Flores away, she suggested he start writing in cursive. But before that, she showed him how to hold the quill, explaining he needed to angle the nib just right to avoid making a blot. Surprisingly, Caesar's doing great, almost too great. This is more than just knowing how to read and write. Way more elegant than what I learned in that crash course from the Flores family. This is some impressive, regal handwriting. Miss Flores didn't realize before that his education was incomplete. Caesar was born the empire's first prince, the heir with the best shot at the throne. He had to have been educated, even if his mind's clouded by this curse now. Traces of what he learned as a kid are still there. Ren's just wondering how many good qualities Caesar's got hidden behind this dang dragon curse. She's really curious to find out what kind of curse has taken hold of him. About the curse placed on the first prince, all we have are ancient legends passed down through generations in the imperial family. The stories tell of the light dragon Tigrashi, who wanted to destroy the world, and how Arcangelo, the first ruler, defeated him. They say an evil dragon laid down a curse, but that's just become an old wives' tale. Until Caesar started showing signs of the curse, everyone thought it was just a load of bull. Irenaeus says the dragon died centuries ago, but its grudge is so deep that the curse just keeps on going. One thing's for sure, Caesar doesn't deserve this kind of treatment. Once upon a time, there were loving duck spouses by a pond, and their love brought forth several eggs. One of them was unusually large, but the couple figured it was just a big egg and kept on warming it. The duckling that hatched from the big egg didn't look like the others at all. Ugly feathers and a black beak. Everything about him just seemed wrong. What came out of that egg was one ugly duckling. Even the mother duck, whom he trusted, turned her back on him. Not a kind old lady, not a chicken, not a cat. Nobody showed the ugly duckling any kindness. The ugly duckling fell into despair, thinking nobody could ever love something so hideous. Like everyone else, the marriage prospect can't even imagine marrying something so monstrous. She decided to end it all, so they'd all regret it. Her father for pushing her, and her mother for not stopping him. She just wanted them both to weep at her funeral, until she got caught up in a mysterious situation. They say water reveals your true self, and seeing it, the girl realized she couldn't die. If she dies, it's all over. She realized there's no point in them regretting anything after she's gone. When she decided to go back and somehow stop this marriage, she mysteriously ended up in a stranger's clutches. The water became her death trap. The man in the black robe shoved her down as hard as he could. As a final touch, he told her to stop struggling and just die already. This hurts like hell, and begging for help is useless here. I wish this was all just a bad dream. The thought of someone waking her up made Irenea stir. She heard a voice calling her name. It happened again. She's been having nightmares every single night for a week now. Some of them showed her things she'd never seen before, but she's starting to figure them out. Sometimes she's suffocated with a pillow. Other times she's shoved around roughly in the dark. Sometimes she's grabbed by cruel hands, or they mess with her food. But one thing always stays the same. Irenea is always a crown princess candidate, but she always gets offed. Girls about her age and in the same boat as her. The princess could have ended up like them if she'd become a candidate any sooner. Wondering if she was losing it, Ren felt Caesar's gentle touch. He knew just how to calm her down. She feels much better now, and she's grateful he patched her up again. Ever since that day, Caesar always comes to wake her up when she's having a nightmare, and every time he thinks he should kiss her. Come to think of it, he always knows exactly when Irenea's having a nightmare, and he always comes to wake her up at the perfect time. Not expecting to hear such a question, Caesar was slightly taken aback at first. But then he said he just knew. Irenea is so tired. She hasn't been sleeping well for days. If these are just dreams, then she should just ignore them. But maybe this dream is pointing to something that actually happened. Like back when someone stole the treasure. All the princess candidates were murdered, and inside the palace, no less. None of them deserved to die such a horrible death. There probably aren't any clues left by now. The palace probably blamed it all on Caesar's curse. The thought that someone must have seen it gave Irenea the idea of a witness. The key witness who should remember the events of that time is right in front of her. Miss Flores reminded him about the girls who came before her, the crown princess candidates who died before she arrived. Hearing this, Caesar put on a surprised face, as if he was hearing about their deaths for the first time. If Irene's hunch is right, a real piece of work did them in. But if her dream is true, then Caesar, who was always around them, is the most reliable witness. The girl couldn't believe her ears when the crown prince said he remembered a splash in the water. So, he knows about the princess who drowned in the pond. He also remembers ducklings playing around, following their mom, quacking loudly. So it was just a fairy tale. Irene's been reading him a lot of books lately, but she didn't expect this effect. Caesar started telling the story about how the ugly duckling looked at his reflection in the river and cried. He really likes that story, so he asked her to read it to him right now. Dealing with Caesar's stubbornness is just impossible. It's way too much for Irene. Once upon a time, there were these two lovey-dovey ducky spouses by a pond, and their love led to a bunch of eggs. Suddenly, the girl looked up from her book when Caesar just blurted out, "What's love?" He asks about love so casually, but it's such a complicated, philosophical question. Actually, love is when you really, really like someone. Just like Caesar and Ren, he really likes her, and she likes Caesar too. Without even realizing what he was saying, the crown prince just confessed his feelings to her. Irene wasn't expecting that, but she tried to keep her cool, knowing Caesar meant it innocently. In that case, she had to reciprocate and tell him how she felt. It was the first time she had ever said that. The girl decided to keep reading when Caesar suddenly started talking about the result of their love. Their love resulted in eggs being laid, so the prince asked when Irene would lay hers. At first, she thought he was talking about a fairy tale, but realizing the prince wanted her to lay eggs, she was speechless. Miss Flores doesn't know if she should explain she can't lay eggs, or if she should use her knowledge. Not giving her a chance to recover, Caesar bombarded her with questions about how many eggs and when she'd lay them. Looks like Irene's really gonna have a tough time explaining the whole birds and the bees thing to him now. She can't even wrap her own head around it. And suddenly the princess said that if they held hands and fell asleep, the eggs would just happen. In the end, the girl went to bed, hoping that would count as lying. It would be too cruel to shatter Caesar's innocence. From now on, she definitely needs to skip over the certain parts about how love makes babies and educational stuff. All the jewelry in the shop was so basic. Giovanetta came here because they said they were setting new trends. In the Duke's eyes, his daughter is perfection, and he believes his wife has amassed great favor. Not only does she have such a beautiful eldest daughter, but the youngest is set to marry a prince. Hearing that, the Duchess slammed her teacup down, and the atmosphere at the table shifted. They say ever since the eldest daughter made her debut, she's been getting a ton of attention. Honestly, she's a worthy heir to the esteemed Flores family. Celestina's daughter was chosen as a companion to Her Majesty the Empress, so she'll be entering the palace soon. The maid walked in right as those two were talking about family matters. She got so flustered that she decided to go prepare lunch and told them to enjoy their time together. Panicked, Irene tried to stop her and explain, but it was already too late. She and Caesar agreed to only discuss this in private, since these things are usually kept under wraps. Caesar's too clueless to see how serious this is, so she's done feeding him that line of bull. Ever since then, Caesar's been obsessed with the idea of them having a kid. He hasn't lost interest, even after she shot him down a bunch of times. Irenaya didn't think he'd be this persistent, but this could blow up big time in the palace. Even so, Caesar just asked if he should hold her hand more. He gets that they gotta keep it on the down low, only when nobody's around. The prince sneaking into the princess's bedroom, the consort hanging around the door, then leaving. That's a whole other level of messed up. At first, the maid thought she'd find a dead body in there, but it's the opposite. They're together all day, whispering and giggling. Someone recently peeped them in the same bed through a crack in the door. The princess actually chose to share her bed with that thing. Everyone knows what happened to the last maids, so until the Empress asks, they ain't heard nothin'. But all that maid gossip is why Mercedes now hates that low-down woman. Irene called Caesar to her room this morning. She had a gift ready for him. She held out the egg to him and said shyly that she laid it, hoping the prince wouldn't suspect anything. Seeing the fruit of their love, Caesar was over the moon with joy. Miss Flores had a baby this morning, and she asked Delphina to get her a bird's egg. It's nothing for her, because the maid is someone who's been through a lot, and in Caesar's eyes, she's just amazing. Irene asked the maid to get any egg, but no matter how you look at it, it looks like a chicken egg. If Caesar was done looking at it, she suggested he go back to his studies and read a book. But hearing that he was going to hatch the egg, she warned him that it could easily break. Caesar promised to be careful and got ready to incubate it in a nest. For some reason, Irene is increasingly feeling like this is starting to get out of hand. Looks like Caesar's dead set on this whole thing and is actually going to sleep in the nest. Now she's starting to think maybe she went a little too far with this. Still, she's got to play along, so she offers to let him come to bed if he gets uncomfortable. Till late that night, the crown prince sat in his makeshift nest, carefully watching over the egg. He's convinced it'll protect Ren. It's the result of their love. In the morning, she woke up like nothing happened, but Caesar was nowhere to be seen. She looked down at the floor and couldn't believe her eyes. Caesar had been sitting on the egg all night. Determined to make this miracle happen, the crown prince shared his excitement with her. Irenaya decided she must be seeing things, imagining the egg just moved. In that unbelievable, dreamlike moment, the eggshell cracked and a bright light was born. This is seriously weird. Light's coming out of a regular bird egg. A little fluffy dude popped out of the shell. A real chick hatched. Irene never thought a chick would hatch, and she has no clue what that light was just now. This is the result of their affection. And they put the chick closer to the fire in the fireplace to keep it warm. All of Irene's schooling and all the books she's read never taught her how to take care of baby birds. They don't know how to raise a chick, but Caesar suggested giving it a little spritz of water. Just then, Delphine walked into the room, and she was horrified to see a newborn bird on the table. Hard to believe that's the egg from yesterday, but according to Caesar, it's the fruit of their love. Irene herself has no idea how it hatched, but figures there was a chick inside the egg. But Delphine's sure that's impossible, since she brought a super fresh egg. Chicks usually don't hatch this fast. You gotta incubate them for at least 20 days. No way it hatched in a single day, and plus, they can't fly like that. With that unpredictable prince right in front of Irene, one more hatchling doesn't even register. Now she's clueless too. As the 70th Holy Cross manager, Flora's eldest daughter paid her respects to the young empress. She's the princess consort's sister, and she'll do whatever it takes to please Her Majesty the Empress. This girl's nothing like her younger sister, so gentle and sweet. It became clear to her that her less than respectful sister had disrespected the Empress. Actually, that kid made her an offer. She said she'd turn the first prince back into a human, asking for a favor. Giovanetta is so bummed that her sister acted so high and mighty in front of Her Majesty. The Empress thinks this girl is definitely wiser than her sister. Even with that kind of setup, being the Empress, she had to keep her cool. No other choice, really. Honestly, Giovanetta sees herself as Her Majesty's girl now, and she's planning to teach her sister a serious lesson. You can tell the social season's kicked off. The palace is buzzing with party vibes. Though here in the Malachite Palace, cut off from the imperial one, you can't even hear a whisper of the celebration. But that also means the summer banquet Irene promised the Empress is coming up fast. They've got 3 months until the summer ball, and honestly, Caesar's been looking pretty stable lately. He's barely acting out anymore, and he's even stringing together some decent sentences now. If this keeps up, maybe it won't just be a pipe dream to have Caesar at the banquet. Of course, those two still have a ton of work ahead of them to make it happen. Caesar named the little guy Abraxas. Maybe that's why Ab seems so damn smart. He even uses the bathroom right, only follows those two around, and hides quietly when others are nearby. Sometimes Irenea even thinks he understands human speech. But of course, that can't be true. Soon, Delphina arrived to announce that there was a guest at the Malachite Palace. This person came to see Her Highness, but the girl doesn't even believe there's anyone who'd bother looking for her. But when face to face with him, more than anything, the princess doesn't want to hear his name. Giovanetta, the darling of all her subjects. A real heartbreaker. When Irenea first entered the Flores household, while everyone else rejected her, Giovanetta was the only one who showed interest. The first Duchess's daughter was pretty shocked to learn that this little dirtbag was now her sister. But to Irenea, her new sister is truly beautiful, like a real princess. It all started pretty well, actually. Giovanetta kept taking care of her, and was very kind to her. She was feeding the girl, and the kid was stoked about some simple stuff she'd never had before, like a total dork. Even if it was just a passing fancy or a game for her, the good vibes Irenea was feeling were totally legit. She also had a tutor, and as she slowly started fitting in with the family, Giovanetta suddenly turned ice cold. Irenea didn't know why, so she couldn't do anything. Her sister's attitude was just something she laid on Irenea, but in a family where she didn't have a single ally, even that was precious. So she wanted to get back in her sister's good graces. Irenea put on a nice dress that fit her great and decided to show it to her sister. But Giovanetta wasn't the same as before, and she reacted badly to Ren wearing her dress. Even though she'd given Irenea the dress herself, she demanded she take it off right away. In the end, the Duke's adopted daughter never found out what exactly had ticked Giovanetta off. From then on, she did whatever she wanted, giving her sister a hard time, like she wanted her gone. After the incident on the stairs, Ren stopped trying to figure her out. Even though Irenea lived her whole life under her thumb, she almost forgot about it the second she stepped into the imperial palace. She hasn't been in touch since she got here, so it's only natural they'd be worried sick. Looking at her sister, Giovanetta realized she hadn't changed one bit, even inside these palace walls. Now that the eldest Flores daughter's here, she's decided to find out how long Ren plans to keep his guest waiting. Mistaking Caesar for a servant, she ordered him to get up and help his master into the living room. She took a jab at her sister for not training her servants properly, but Irenea told her to watch her own manners. Nobody disrespects a member of the imperial family like that, bringing shame on the Flores family name. Speaking of which, the princess isn't just talking about His Highness. She expects to be addressed formally too. If it was just about how they treated her, Irenea could ignore it like she always has. But this isn't about her comfort. Here in the imperial palace, her power is tied to first Prince Caesar's power, and how they treat her is how they treat Caesar. That's why she needs to keep her chin up and her back straight. Doesn't matter that Miss Flores is Caesar's princess consort. She has to shut down any insubordination in the imperial palace. Seeing the imperial knights behind her, Giovanetta realized just how precarious her situation was. Afraid of bringing trouble down on the whole Flores family, she bowed her head and, for the glory of the cross's insight, greeted their highnesses. For the glory of the cross's insight, Irenaeus hopes that Milady will be more courteous in the future. And now, she suggested they hear the details inside. Everything seemed calm, but then Caesar bolted and suddenly headed towards the guest. Getting closer, he held out his fist to the girl, like he was about to give her something. He looked like a total mess, but up close, he was cleaner than Giovanetta thought. Seeing a dirty worm in his hand, the girl screamed as loud as she could, totally disgusted. Caesar the Great came strutting back, saying he'd taken care of the problem. It was so ridiculous. Irenea couldn't help but bust out laughing right behind her sister's back. Giovanetta was absolutely livid, like a wild animal, over what those knuckleheads pulled. That evening, Irenea was pretty surprised to hear Caesar had a visitor too, and so late at night. According to Delphina, it's Prince Caesar's personal physician and the imperial tutor, Sir Richard. He became a court mage thanks to his connection with the previous emperor, but like most mages, he's rarely around. So Irenea asked Delphina to go make sure their guest had everything he needed. And wouldn't you know it, Giovanetta's back home already. That kid's a lady-in-waiting to the Empress now. It's already a pain keeping tabs on the Empress, and now I've got Giovanetta to worry about too. Noticing how hard Abraxas was trying to get her attention, she figured he was trying to cheer her up. But in that instant, everything shifted before her eyes. Irene suddenly saw a garden by a pond where her chambers should be. Something seriously weird is going on. This is the exact view from the pond. At that moment, the princess considered that this might be a place from that nightmare she keeps having. But she's not even asleep. Why is she seeing something like this? These thoughts are driving her crazy, haunting her. That pond. She has to go there. Upon seeing his guest, His Highness Prince Caesar's face changed noticeably. He couldn't be happier. Richard's glad to see him. It's been way too long. The Imperial Mage got curious. Since when is His Highness like this? Has the, situation stabilized? This isn't something easily fixed, so it's clear Caesar's in way better shape than before. It made Richard think that something must have happened while he was gone. The path to avoid the guards, the servants' passage, it's all just like the vision. In the dream, everything was blurry, and the pain was so intense, Irenea couldn't even process what was happening. But this time, it's different. The closer she gets, the clearer the scene becomes, just a little further. If she goes a little further, she might find something. Namely, the key to the unexplained deaths of the princess candidates. Getting closer to this place, Irenea didn't expect to see the person responsible for everything. A girl suddenly ran out of this monster's clutches, claiming she didn't know anything. Irenea can't believe her eyes. Someone dared to do that in the imperial palace itself. Seeing the night visitor, Matthias de la Rosa immediately assumed it was his dear sister-in-law. Enraged, the girl started yelling that he couldn't allow himself to do something so unacceptable in the palace. So Matthias's sister-in-law is a real prude if she can't understand that it's natural for a guy and a girl to be attracted to each other. But he's more interested in figuring out what's up with her. What brought her to such a secluded spot so late at night? Irene can hardly say she was chasing a vision, only she knows. And of all people, she had to run into this guy. Come to think of it, it is weird, without a single guard, and in such a state. Matthias considered the idea that the girl was planning to take a dive. And he thought Miss Flores was different from other women. Guess the curse is really something else. If the second prince knew that, he would have taken a sample much sooner. Absolutely certain he's a terrible person, Irene declared it's not a curse, and lineage has nothing to do with Caesar. To him, it sounds like they all removed themselves from the equation because they were sick of his messed-up brother. It makes sense. But the truth is, it's not that they removed themselves from the equation. It's entirely possible they were taken out. It wasn't until she got here that Irene finally felt certain. This nightmare wasn't just a dream. He's laying down the truth, that the deaths of the princess candidates were staged. Sounds like the kind of thing that could get you in serious trouble around here. Matthias figured he'd see what this girl was even babbling about. This is the Imperial Palace. Everyone here answers to the Emperor, and Miss Flores is going to have to answer for that blasphemous claim, suggesting that murder happened in this sacred palace. Looking into that guy's eyes, Irenea felt the ground disappear. All she could think about was Caesar. The crown prince's heart started pounding. It was like his soul knew Ren was in danger. Seeing what happened, Matthias started calling out to the girl who fell into the water. Just then, some weird bird flew past him, like it came out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Sir Richard decided to find out what was going on. Not buying the story about a sudden fit. I can hardly believe it, but there's this crazy divine glow around His Majesty. This magic light brought little Abraxas, who immediately spilled the beans on everything that happened. Richard's totally bugging out. It's a familiar. And he's got no clue when Caesar leveled one up. Making a desperate move, the first prince punched through the glass, ready to take a swan dive. Richard barely had time to warn him they were 3 stories up when Caesar just went for it, like a rocket. Like a cat, he landed on his feet, like he had 9 lives or something, totally unscathed. Catching a glimpse of a maid, he immediately shouted that Rin's in trouble down by the pond. Right then, Irenaea felt like she was freezing to death. Even though she'd lived this death in nightmares a million times, the real pain was way worse. So, Rin fought tooth and nail for her life, just to end up like this. In what feels like her final moment, she doesn't even know if she'll make it to Annalise. Annalise never initiated a hug, never offered her hand for Ren to take, and never let her call her mom. But when people threw rocks in the street, she shielded the girl, even when sick. Coughing up blood, she always put Ren first. Before Irenaea became part of the palace, Annalise was the only one who gave a damn about her. Maybe things really would be better if she ended up with her mother, but something's still bugging her. Caesar. Irenaea wants to see him one last time. Thinking about it, she saw his face before her. Like her mother's image, Annalise told her to survive. When Rin finally came to, she realized she tasted the crown prince's lips on hers. It was their first kiss. Seeing the girl alive, Caesar thanked the heavens. Everything's gonna be all right now. Just then, the Imperial Knights arrived at the pond, led by Countess Elvira. She demanded an explanation for what was going on, saying the maid told her something happened to the princess consort. After hearing that, the countess rushed right over to find out exactly what went down. And what's more, she's curious how the second crown prince ended up here. That's when Caesar blew a gasket. Convinced Matthias pushed Rin into the water. But the second prince claimed he just wanted to save the lady who fell in. Since a big explanation wouldn't help Irene right now, she took the blame, saying she slipped while walking. If that's the case, it's a relief to everyone. But someone's definitely side-eyeing this whole situation. The lady came out to see what all the commotion was about, and this is what she found. Just then, Irene remembered that while she was falling into the pond, she saw that face. It's been a long time coming, but now the princess consort has finally spotted the perp who took out the previous princesses. Baroness Mercedes has been watching the princess this whole time, but these words sound forced to her. At first, she didn't want to get involved, but now she's decided to find out what the princess consort was doing here. And on top of that, sneaking past her own guards in the dead of night, she ended up alone with the second prince. Mercedes hasn't been serving His Highness lately, but she's experienced enough to know what kind of guy Ren is. The fact that the princess kicked out all the maids and fired her, a close associate of the crown prince, is reason enough for Mercedes to lay low. Since that's a load of bull, Irenaea immediately claimed she met the second prince by accident. But this coincidence seems fishy to the maid. If that's the case, then Her Majesty came here alone. This is the very pond where the previous princess took her own life. Things are getting interesting, but since the princess has amused Matthias quite a bit, he can't let her get the boot. So, he said he decided to take a walk, because the weather was nice and just happened to bump into the lady. It's nighttime, so they must have mistaken him for a stranger. She got spooked, lost her footing, and fell into the water. Since His Highness said so, the Countess suggested we drop the subject. Before leaving, she told the princess to take care of herself. Even if the second prince showing up is a coincidence, Mercedes' visit is totally out of the blue. It's like she's keeping tabs on us. No matter how much healing mana Richard uses, it's gonna be a waste if Miss Flores keeps acting like this. After realizing everything, the girl apologized to the prince's personal mentor. Caesar's personal mentor channeled all his healing magic, but he wanted to know if anything else was bothering her body. Thanks to the mentor, the princess recovered. That's enough to keep her safe for now. Actually, Richard's got both elven and human blood, so it's more accurate to call him a half-breed. The mentor's name is Richard. He's from the Havilium Forest, but he said we can just call him Richard. Lord Richard figured the lady already knew the prince's curse had stabilized. He also asked if the girl had been troubled by illusions or auditory hallucinations since arriving at the palace. Judging by Ren's reaction, it seems it's true, so the Imperial Mage asked her to give him her hand. Only after Caesar said it was okay did Irene permit the mage to touch her hand. Just as Richard thought, she possesses magical abilities, but the girl has no idea how to use them. The thing is, it's not standard magic, because the magic of the great sage Cosimo flows within Milady. Cosimo, Flores' ancestor, who defeated the insane dragon centuries ago and was granted the title of Duke. Judging by the fact that Caesar's condition has become more stable, it seems the Flores family didn't place a seal to suppress the dragon. Quite the opposite. Cosimo Flores cast a spell on his bloodline to appease the insane dragon, so that kind of magic is in Irene, which is why Caesar recovers when he drinks her blood. The illusions she may have seen could have been influenced by a piece of the dragon's power, since the curse was temporarily lifted. It's fate. Richard says providence is a force that flows through everything in the universe. After years of training, you can glimpse the truth itself. So, all the illusions Ren saw were real? Everything she witnessed was the truth? The mage said if it was stuff that already happened, then yeah. But if she's looking at the future, that's a whole different ballgame. Sounds like seeing the future's not quite her speed yet. But the future doesn't always just lay itself out there either. It's special, because it's always opening up new possibilities. Still, you can change fate, but messing with cause and effect is risky. So, Ren can change destiny with her own power. Speaking of which, Richard wants to study her blood, since it's closely tied to His Highness's curse. Maybe he can find a way to get rid of it. They all ended up where Baroness Mercedes least expected them. It was such a perfect shot to take out that gimpy chick, but this punk had to show up and screw everything up. A guy like that, part of the royal family? Man, fate's a real jerk. Mercedes doesn't get why they needed another kid when they already had such an awesome prince. Caesar's gonna be all right, trust me. He's just under that witch's spell. Once she's gone, the prince will be back to his old self. Mercedes has to do this because His Highness only has her. No matter how you slice it, it's still weird that Mercedes was even there. Maybe she wasn't around when the whole mess started, but she's been watching Irenea from day one. Even if the second prince caused the incident, that girl needs to watch her back around Mercedes, lying about the death of someone she offed herself. She's got to deal with that somehow. Out of nowhere, Caesar decided Ren was upset, poked her forehead, and said she was frowning right there. Realizing she made him worry, Irenea told him everything was fine and pulled the guy in close. She doesn't even know when they got this close, but when they're like this, it's like all her troubles just melt away. She's dying to know if Caesar feels the same way. She decided to work with Lord Richard. Maybe they can actually break the curse. Caesar's gorgeous even now, and Irenea can't even imagine how stunning he'll be later. His lips actually touched hers back then. Just thinking about it makes her blush and turn away. It's all because Caesar healed her with his kiss, but she never thought their first kiss would be like that. If it weren't for him, Irenea would be dead right now, which is why she's so grateful to her savior. Smiling, the crown prince leaned in and kissed her cheek, just like he does every day. It was like some kind of cosmic force pulled Ren to him in that moment, and she gently kissed his cheek. Giovanetta's gonna give her a piece of her mind today. Can you believe she used to be so bold, now she's shrinking in fear? The maid says something happened to the young lady last night. Flores' eldest daughter couldn't believe her ears when she heard Irenea almost drowned in the pond. Giovanetta said her sister would have been better off just sinking to the bottom, but the maid reminded her that would bring misfortune on the whole family. Martha just doesn't know that Giovanetta's sister is one stubborn girl. She'd never off herself. Still, something's bothering the Flores family heir. She wants to know who was watching them. That same day, Martha brought Madame Orocho. Just like Lady Flores asked, Mercedes has no idea what business the princess consort's sister has with her. First off, the lady said she was very pleased to meet her and introduced herself as Giovanetta Flores, the Duke's eldest daughter. Mercedes thought she looked very noble. This lady is nothing like that mudblood. If someone like her became the princess consort, their stroll with the prince wouldn't be a total eyesore. How about you hang back, play hostess, and offer the guys some drinks? They'd really appreciate that. Still, she has no clue why Lady Flores summoned her here. First off, Giovanetta apologized for her sister's behavior. I mean, she straight up kicked Madame Alonso out. According to the young lady, Irene has always been a bit off, but nobody thought she was capable of something like that. Wiping away tears, she apologized for her sister's stupidity and for only realizing everything now. After all, Lady Alonso isn't just the Crown Prince's most trusted confidant. She's practically a mother figure to him. The truth is, Mercedes was just trying to help the princess with good intentions, but Her Majesty wasn't very understanding. Realizing how much Lady Alonso had been suffering all this time, the girl hugged her and offered to listen to everything. Looks like this maid's resentment is even deeper than Giovanetta thought. In the end, Mercedes spilled everything that happened to her, and even apologized for acting like a total fool. Now that Giovanetta's living in the Imperial Palace, she told the lady to let her know if any problems come up. She'll be happy to help out in any way she can. So Mercedes suggested that the lady might be able to keep an eye on the princess. She's just worried about the prince, living alone with Her Highness like that. Giovanetta said that was really smart, and offered to take care of everything herself then. If the princess, that girl, makes even the slightest move, she'll let them know. What happened is now history, and Irenea had a vision that Giovanetta and Mercedes are now in cahoots. The truth is, she saw the ones who tried to get rid of her, and they might still be plotting something. Good thing Caesar's here during this stressful time. He hugged his wife and asked if it hurt. The main thing is Irenea's okay for now, but that might not last. Does Richard think that's enough to use his influence and catch the killer, now that people know about magic? The thing is, Her Highness can't just go around telling everyone about her powers. They might brand her a witch. Richard's lost faith in humanity. They only feel safe when they label what they don't understand as evil. But since Ren saw it through her visions, if they don't do anything, that future is guaranteed to happen. Hearing that, Delphine said hopefully there has to be some way. The ability to see the truth. At first, the maid didn't believe it, but now she's sure her mistress used her power the day she saved her. Now she owes her life to the princess consort. That way, Her Highness can overcome this too. Like Richard said before, fate can be changed, but you gotta tread carefully so you don't break the connection. Irene needs to think all this over. She's sure Mercedes is coming for her. Lady Arak is a dangerous person who's hurt a lot of people. If Ren escapes death once, she'll try again. That incident at the pond backfired on Her Highness Princess, all because of the lack of proof. She needs solid arguments, something that'll convince everyone, something that'll shut down any excuse. Caesar showing up is a total surprise, and Ren immediately wants to know what he thinks about Mercedes. The prince calls the nanny Merche. This might be the only chance to figure out his feelings for her. Even though the lady raised Caesar like her own son, Irenea said she's a bad person, a real piece of work. Even after learning that Merche has done some truly messed up things multiple times, Caesar didn't say a word. He figured out they're talking about the deaths of the women who were close to him. That's right, Mercedes killed them all, and now she's thirsty for the current princess consort to bite the dust. Caesar doesn't want Rin to die, so they gotta stop Mercedes, and the crown prince can help with that. No doubt about it, Caesar's gonna protect this girl at any cost. Good thing Delphina and Richard were on board right away, and promised to do everything they could. Irenia expected the maid to agree, but elves are usually stuck up with humans, and yet the Lord went along with it. He knows what the princess is thinking, but said he couldn't refuse His Highness's request. With that settled, Irenia laid out a clear plan of action for each of them. Soon after, Her Majesty the princess's maid slipped out of the castle walls under the cover of her hood. But she wasn't careful enough, and a knight spotted her, so now she's got nowhere to run. The guard demanded she show what she was hiding, and Delphina had no choice but to reveal the letter. Around that time, Giovanette got filled in on something she could barely believe. Turns out, Irenia sent the second prince a letter, setting up a late-night rendezvous at the pond. So, Giovanette's sister is playing games with other guys? The Empress needs to hear about this. But Lady Flores had a better idea. She asked Martha to get everything ready for departure and inquired about Madame Arancho's whereabouts. The Lord is her salvation, a shepherd watching over her, making sure she wants for nothing. Giovanetta's worried about her younger sister, and she's too ashamed to talk to anyone about it. Nobody gave Madame Arancho the right to mess with time and control her enemy's abilities. According to Giovanetta, Irenea's planning another date with the second prince. It's hard for her to get involved directly given the situation. Since Madame Arancho is close to Caesar, Lady Flores asked her to talk some sense into Irenea before a scandal breaks out. Hearing what happened, Mercedes begged, believing such a morally bankrupt woman couldn't be a princess. She remembers her son when he was still a baby. The lady first saw His Highness shortly after losing her own stillborn child. The late Adelaide recommended her as the prince's nanny. Even as a newborn, Caesar possessed a power unlike other children. He was magnificent, body and soul. Mercedes still vividly remembers the awe she felt. But the good times didn't last. Being a prince meant he couldn't stay a kid. They put a sword in his hand when he was 6. Caesar started his training. Life pulled him away from his surrogate nanny, and Mercedes had to accept it. Until that incident happened, a miracle. That bright light returned to Mercedes' arms. After that, things went back to normal. Caesar was by her side again, and nobody dared say a word. Hidden from prying eyes, the nanny believed they were finally inseparable forever. But then that day came. The first time was genuinely an accident. In the bridal chamber, the bride got spooked real bad and fell, cracking her head hard. She didn't die right away. But a woman who was so freaked out by her husband's true nature didn't deserve to be his wife. Once he'd done it once, the second time was way easier. All those brides were just spoiled brats who didn't deserve to be with the prince. This 5th bride is proving to be the biggest headache of them all. At first, Madame Alonso thought it wasn't so bad. You could see she was comfortable around His Highness. But then that brazen, loose woman dared to come between them. Today, this all ends. Nothing will ever keep Mercedes apart from her son again. After everything, God will realize His mistake and sent Caesar the perfect partner. As soon as the night is over, the Aranzo light will return, and she and Caesar will be together again. Striving for her cherished goal gives Irenia more strength. She's sticking to her plan. Abe gave her the signal from his pocket, and she's so grateful to him for it. Richard knows that the bird has the ability, granted by His Highness, to sense danger. Everyone's being so supportive, so Irenia decided to trust them. These people care about her. As soon as our girl got to the pond, she could feel Mercedes lurking nearby. Truth is, she totally expected the maid to show up and try to ice her. Seems like it's too late now, but Irenia drops the bomb. She knows Mercedes offed the previous brides. Her Highness totally lost it, confused as hell. They were all harmless, and the maid probably has a thing for Caesar. Mercedes only got away with it, 'cause she ain't one for chit-chat. She did the same thing to Miss Flores. That's why they're all pushing up daisies, because Madame Alonso is head over heels for Caesar. Back at the ball, Delfina was fighting tooth and nail against the guards, trying to get to Her Majesty and spill the beans. Countess Elvira came out to see who the heck was making a racket outside the Empress's chambers at this hour. Right then and there, the maid begged her to save Her Highness, saying she was in danger. This is super serious. Something's threatening the life of our princess consort. Meanwhile, Madame Alonso didn't even bat an eye as she brutally took care of her son's latest bride. This is a happy day for her. Lady Flores is finally really dead. She did it. She killed again for her son Caesar. Hearing some noise in the bushes, Mercedes pulled up her hood and decided her work here was done. She needed to get out. At that moment, the unbelievable happened. As if resurrected, Irenea stood up, whole and unharmed. At the top of her lungs, she started screaming that someone attacked her over there, raising a ruckus throughout the whole forest. Scared, Mercedes tried to run, but she fell right into some magic chains. Sir Richard advised her to be quiet, because he was having a hard time controlling his power against a person. Just then, Delfina appeared on the horizon. She just happened to bring a huge crowd with her as witnesses. Turns out, Lady Alonso harmed the princess, so the Countess arrived with guards to find out what happened. After hearing about the terrible incident, Madame Elvira demanded an explanation from the maid. Madame Aranzo was loudly accused of attempted murder. In front of all the aristocrats, her hands were covered in blood. Then, to defend herself, the lady accused the princess of being a witch. Otherwise, why would such a young girl be wandering around alone? And even after losing so much blood, she's still alive. Mercedes wasn't easy to catch. Looks like she came here prepared. However, Irenea declared that faith in God isn't witchcraft. She managed to survive with the help of scripture and the cross. Of course, it might seem strange that she was here alone, but the girl came here to offer prayers for the tormented soul of the previous princess, who threw herself into this pond. According to Richard, Her Highness is bleeding because she's wounded. If he hadn't cast healing spells, she wouldn't have survived. It's customary to pray alone, but Caesar was worried about his wife and asked the Lord to accompany her. So His Highness, who was right there, is ready to back it all up. He wants to know why Mercia did it. Offing a praying princess consort? That's messed up. Come to think of it, Ma'am always seemed pretty sour whenever a new bride showed up. Murch is claiming it's all lies, and she's still seeing the prince as that little kid, hoping he'll understand. But Caesar came down on her with the same fury she used to stab his bride. At this rate, Lady Aranzo might kick the bucket before they even hand down a sentence. Right then, Irenea started yelling for help to stop her. But what she saw just blew her mind.